Shirley here with Sirius Telus Moon Jupiter Hour, and this is Moon Night. The moon is with Rahu, and Jupiter is 18 degrees Cancer. So there is a reception between Jupiter and the moon. Mars is sextiling Neptune. Sun and Mercury conjoining 2 degree Aquarius. And there is something I want to talk about because as a researcher, okay, when I looked at the body mind question, the brain, the changing brain, the developing brain, but also the neurological healing at topics ranging from near-death experience, the use of trauma to create inverted type of psychic abilities, which is something that to this day I'm basically refining my work on that thesis as I'm learning about these topics. And there was an attempt to target and traffic me um, using every single juncture that could have been a way out, whether it's housing, food, help, rehabilitation, social workers, um, shelters, or the lack of, um, basically naturally, psychology, psychiatry, every single thing, because I unveiled the fundamental of how Peter rings work on a nervous system level. And yes, there is use of technology to hack nervous system. This is as ancient as Hitler. And yes, there are cloning projects. Yes, there are all these things. My thesis, that was, by the way, supposed to be a philosophy of science. I just noticed that certain sciences, particularly the psychiatric science, developed antithetically to, let's say, Kuhn paradigm of changing sciences. It will say, oh, it's pseudoscience. Well, pseudoscience or not, the British Empire used it. This was my first degree last essay. The British Empire used it to build mythical hospitals and make the residents of Britain jealous of the medical care at the colony. That was you, and there was a class war permeating the care that basically reaccentuated British identity. They wanted the Britain to be proud of something, and they wanted psychiatry to be one of those pioneering sciences. Okay, the lobotomy and stuff, that they wanted people to be aching for that. This is the same as I saw happening during pandemics, presenting something as a cure and wanting people to argue about the right to have that cure rather than patient sovereignty or sovereignty. One could even go as far as class, mhm, class in both India and Britain serving as to prevent sovereignty, individual sovereignty, that actually grants national sovereignty to emerge. And this in itself was the beginning of colonialism, okay? Because people couldn't ignore that. And when it happened to women, then it happened to BIPOC people, then it happened to this. But when they were aching to get treatment, and that was the treatment, now they could no longer, after the existential crisis, they could no longer ignore that the mythical identity is broken, and that was internally the beginning of decolonization, which is finishing up on that essay that I wrote over 10 years ago. Now, using technology, and this is where science becomes from um, innovative science, speculative science, to, or what people even call pseudoscience, to conventional science. Okay, most sciences won't go through the 1% accuracy of exact sciences. This is true. It's like going through, it's like most models, no matter how thin, will never be the exact standard of beauty, no matter how many surgeries. Okay, they're all beautiful, but they'll never be that particular. And the closest they will be, the more we'll think they're AI. Or, in scientific terms, pseudoscience. That Venus in the sign of sciences. Okay, making connections. Um, but here is the thing: what if technologies are secretive? And when something is secretive, people don't have. Imagine your government received certain decisions in complete secret, justify it by national security, but the homeless are not housed. Would you trust that government? Okay? And so, taking issuing a warrant of conspiracy to scientists that are on the process of the scientific endeavor, going from speculative to conventional and challenging the convention. Okay? Example, when I wrote my essay on the use of the British Empire in the myth of the science of psychiatry, because back then it was the myth of the science of psychiatry. And by the way, in many ways, many of the sciences also now, okay, which is why patient sovereignty is so important. Um, but also, when I wrote that essay, I don't know what was I thinking that I was writing, hey, but they claim that the weather affects the mental state of the people, and this is not so, or this is far-fetched. I don't think like that today. In fact, I didn't think like that before that. In fact, I don't even know what was I thinking when I wrote that. Okay? That does not pertain to the rest of the essay. This is how scientific endeavor is about speculative, seeing something at work, challenging the convention. Do we have the 1% exact sciences? Well, that too is challenged because what the 1% of exact sciences, first of all, has to be so discovered, so non controversial that it's accepted. And into that is both our awareness, because it has to have large n cases. Okay, Chiron, for example, in Aries, co-occurred, if we think since 2018-19 to today. What has been different regarding the medicine? If I tell you patient sovereignty in the last couple of years, and take a look at this, if I told you something like this, researchers show in high peer-reviewed journals time and time again that in the last years, since 2018-19, patients have lost faith in doctors, and they began to call for something that all in law could define for patient sovereignty. Some of them even considering that a political term, and that's somehow related to their healing. Okay, as an astrologer, I can say, yeah, Chiron has been going through Aries since 2018-19. Which seems to you more scientifically eloquent? The one without astrology in it, right? Hmm. Well, not if you're practicing the sciences and technologies that are considered secretive. To you, I could say Chiron has been in Aries since 2018-19, and you would want, the most you would want is a second opinion of another astrologer. Trust me, I do astrology. I was almost scooped out of my own practice to do mundane astrology. To which I say, hey, sovereignty, patient sovereignty, of course, sexual and energy sovereignty is a prerequisite to cohesive true information. Now, this use of those technologies, rituals, occult, egregores, okay, when a group of people concentrate on something, those things were used to lower frequencies to get people to be under mind control. First, within the elite and themselves. Those rituals were meant to preserve the clergy, the elite, the decision maker, the bankers, everyone a part of a collapsed frequency system. No love that is actually loving. No sexuality that is actually honoring the sexual self, the life creation. And then all they want is kids. Okay? They would try to get person to an infant level to program their sexuality using nervous system hacking. But when person knows it's not love that is actually loving and it's not their authentic sexuality, because they want to lower the frequency of conception, labor, and birthing. To have people under mind control. Everybody is aware that if they watch, I don't know, porn, which by the way, they're forced to watch in their fraternities, sororities, or whatnot, then suddenly they want more and more violence. They basically orgasm on dopamine. Those who actually go to purchase or what is called OnlyFans or I don't know what, a lot of them deal with what they call incubus, succubus. Of course, you take a person that was raped, tortured, and trafficked, and it's a shit ton of torture. What were you thinking? And then if anybody would tell you that you're celebrity star or OnlyFans star, and usually it goes through that trajectory. Okay, they need a sex tape to get a job. Also not in the entertainment industry. If somebody told you, yeah, they were tortured and trafficked since childhood, you would say this is conspiracy theory. Okay? Then when it happens to you and you become a sex addict, all of the money that was supposed to go to residents, to having a family, to having a home, goes to try to traffic this one person to an infant state, try to get them to orgasm on being raped as an infant so that they will bring babies when they are raped. And then the babies will be raped as infants. And the person will see nothing wrong because the shame and dissociation mechanism would pop into the nervous system. That's your real estate crisis, when they bury a dead baby with a living baby on a real estate. It's part of their rituals of wealth consolidation and natural resources and the relevant real estate, which is also your housing. That's what they do. It's a frequency. The more aligned the person is with truth, telling the truth, and so on and so forth. But here's what they do. They try to, the people there take oaths so not to speak, so that they wouldn't heal from the sexual abuse that they were causing the other people, and that they were ritually abused. That's your inaugurations. That's your participation in investments group. The ones that are yielding because they know where to move the money. They move it as union, so they break the market. When the people don't know that the C factor in a mother that killed her baby was that mother was trying to prevent the baby from being trafficked because she was raped to bring that baby. And where do they want to take the baby to? Sex trafficking rings of children and infants. That baby might be buried alive or dead. And if he's buried alive, then he's buried alive with a dead baby on a real estate that is also some families' housing. So a mother kills her baby, and everybody says, what kind of a monster does that? Well, we didn't have the C factor to factor in for these things that are called conspiracy. Okay? 1990s, it was what? Satanic panic. What is today? Is ICE satanic panic? Because they train them by the same rituals. That's why they see a woman in her car and they shoot her, because they're afraid of her. Why are they afraid of her? When they abuse infants, when they were abused as an infant, a woman is terrifying, because a woman says this is a no-go. They are used to Ghislaine Maxwell's. And I saw one yesterday, 2 days ago, holding a sign for a raped and murdered civilian man to be returned from being hostage, basically to return his body after he was raped and murdered. You say, what's wrong with that woman? It's a great thing to do. She stands to, fantastic. I confront her about the fact that not just Bibi Netanyahu, but also Ehud Barak, while I'm sitting and holding that note, okay? I said we should have demonstrations that are also for the disability people. Here's a demonstration, take a note, and I sit, they stand, I sit with the same note. Good cause. And I confront her with the fact that Ehud Barak raped 12, 13 years old girl by Epstein. She says to me, were you there? She wasn't asking that about Bibi. Why was she there? Did she witness? Did she take a photo? What's the difference between Bibi and Ehud Barak? Oh, she likes the red pill. Same as Americans that thought it was satanic panic when it was about the blue pill doing that. Bill Clinton, that apologized for cloning, for syphilis, and for MK Ultra, and asked to defund MK Ultra, was doing that by Epstein. Forced to. Yeah, all of them were forced to. A child is not born and says, I will be a pedo one day, which consequently would allow him to be also the president of the United States. But oh, dear children, what would you like to be when you grow up? Pedos, child rapists. Well, if they say presidents, everybody would be, ooh. If they say child predators, everybody would be, what the heck is going on with you? Who grew these children? It's the same job. Same job. If the president is not child predator, how will we trust him? He's not extortable. How will he commit genocide? How will he just say, well, there, even though the army can't do it, so we'll find somebody who can do what? Gun down civilians in their houses. Find a populist leader that does that. Okay? Study case Trump, populist leader. By the way, Bill Clinton also tried to be a populist leader. It wasn't going so well. He was trying to be a populist, charismatic populist, left-wing leader. Very likely he was. I mean, he got elected. Probably a shit ton of child predators also in the blue pill. Okay? Now, why do I speak American? Because this thing is everywhere. The European populist leaders went to imitate America. The Israeli celebrity leader, same thing. The Chinese, by the way, they think in terms of structures. And what do they have? They have social credit score. Okay. Oh, if the structure is biased by mistreating women, okay, that at the end of the day, because something good from Chinese thinking is structural. For example, when I looked into ESP in United States, Russia, where I couldn't find any information, meaning they practice that more than anyone, they don't even speak. They don't even have articles on that in a foreign language. They just practice that. So it's kind of like finding articles about, I don't know, I would have to be a linguist of the astral or something. I would find it in the linguist of the astral. Like, look in the Akasha. What are you looking in Google Scholar? But in China, they look at things as systems. So they would use children to diagnose the medical condition of a patient. If I take a look at the traditions of Chinese medicines, a lot of them link to the body as a system. And then we look at the engineering of the flow of the energy in the blood. Okay, a lot of my thinking is actually affected by this. And I have Saturn in the 9th house, so it's compatible to think of systems and structures. By the way, when I talk about sexual sovereignty, I don't talk about the moral, I talk about the structural component that is inherent to identity. This is where I'm different than, let's say, feminism. And this is also why it was easier for me to identify that structural component exists in the secret society when boys rape boys, and then they have child marriages between old men and the boy. How did I get this information? I wanted to basically dissolve that juncture, that energy block. There's also a wealth block, a structural block to sovereignty. This is called rape. And then all the things alongside that begin to, assemble to be dissolved. Kind of like Chinese medicine. Now, this is why I said the sky that punishes the land loses the mandate of the heaven, be it the leader or the people. Because we perceive the sky to be punishing the land. When we see winters in Siberia, we think that it's a punishment. Okay? But when we think about our health, we think about Louise Hay, this is a Western holistic health practitioner. Her greatest contribution was our belief system needs to be providing for our health. Okay, so there are a lot of even Islamic imams that say that. They say, okay, if you believe that Allah, let's say, or God, is this terrible punishing entity, then this is creating an egregore, basically. That's what it works on. But if you believe as God is loving and so on and so forth, then so it will be. But into that component enters ritual abuse. And the reason that I discovered that is because I actually practiced Okay, actually, as a holistic health practitioner, I actually practiced, whether it's gratitude, benevolence, self-love, secure attachment, okay, embodiment, all these things. I don't just talk them from the outside. I also practice them. And then the argument that came was for ritual abuse that is trying to detach people from the organic. And also from that, whether it's divine connection or in Chinese language, is basically trying to create junctures of energy congestion that prevent the empire from sustaining in a natural ebb and flow. They want you to think that rape is a systemic structure that is natural and organic. And to think that attending to that is morals that you need to suspend to reach the structure, and find out that you just need to adapt to that structure. It's not. And this is the issue when people set the structure. Okay, Mars Saturn related are about setting a structure. Okay, this is what they try to do with the Saturn Neptune 0 degree Aries, to set a global structure. This is why a lot of people are talking about the matrix and so on. They're basically talking about structure. Is the structure low frequency? And to do that, they would need to fumble with the life energy so that they would get people into fertility issues and then pressure them to have children, then serve the savior technology, which allows for cloning. When people do IVF, okay, they don't actually know how many infants were born from that they were told is not successful. Unregistered births. And into what wombs those children were going. Why? Because they have to trust the doctor that tells them, here are the results, here, this is in the lab, this is this. That's the most that they can have in terms of trust. When a woman has cysts, they give her estrogen related stuff. Even if I, as an aromatherapist, gave a woman oil that is that likens in its activity natural essential oil, estrogen, it would not be compatible for when she has something growing that is an anomaly of growth of cells. I would want to see what is happening there. What was malnourished? What was not growing? What was malnourished in its growth in that area, which would be the relational chakra. Okay, so that it can be supported. First of all, to know that she's not crazy for having pain and she's not imagining. Now, if she lives in a society that's governed by trying to make men and women infertile and pressure for children so that the birth would be controlled by the government, that can later take the children, jab them with whatever, hack into their nervous system, and as infant, I'm sorry, play with their pleasure pain and try to get the child addicted to sex, that is basically violence. It is a terrible mechanism to talk about. But if we don't talk about that, people will just have to face that. And when they call it satanic panic and conspiracy theory, then and it's very difficult. Of course, it's very difficult for parents to hear about that. And when that technology acts as some rare congestion of rare earth minerals, which already becomes a physical thing that one can, through electricity and wave-based frequencies, okay, hack and interfere in brain activity, then it creates an abundance of issues. And when those behind that technology are not thinking how to balance the excited nervous system of the person after trauma, which, by the way, could be a good use for that. Okay? This creates a structure that tries to perpetuate trauma from the sexual energy to basically lower the frequencies of birthing, conception, and basically humanity. Into what do we know about tyrannical societies? There's no love. This love is only for the leader in tyrannical societies. If there is a leader, if there's a system, then there is no such component as love. That creates a myriad of problems, medical problems as well, that are an abundant source of charging and changing currencies on the account of the non-sovereign individual. This is how people that can kill masses upon masses upon masses upon masses of people are created, because death in these worlds is divine, is heavenly, is getting out of the matrix. Inspired by Bellanova. Okay, let's see if I have it on the go. Maria Antoinetta Bellanova. Yeah, she has a lot of interesting content. And again, you don't have to agree in verbatim. Even I don't agree. Does Shirley 2026 agree in verbatim with Shirley 2015 or 2014? No, some things yes, some things no. That's a part of growing and evolving as humans. But when it comes to remembrance, when it comes to our own internal composition, when it comes to identify what is organic and inorganic, do you know how much shame it removes, by the way? It removes a shit ton of shame, because when one understands what's lying underneath, then they can identify. One of the greatest contributions of Bellanova, okay, was when the child is separated from his parents or doesn't receive the type of nourishing, loving touch, okay, and that can happen for various reasons. The parent could have been under trauma. The parent could have um, hugged the child when they are in trauma and emotional overwhelm, and then the child doesn't like the touch or something like that. Many things, doesn't have to be abusive parent. But what happens is that when a child doesn't receive that level of care, for example, children even in incubation, that tries to imitate the warm temperatures, but sometimes successfully, sometimes not. And again, when it returns to his parents, it's more possible, but the parents need to be calm and healthy and so on. Then what happens? Those needs that the child is not aware that is not receiving, of course, because it's an infant, become eroticized. They would try to meet that need through the erotic. And this is where the role of Neptune and the erotic comes into play. Neptune is the longing for what we didn't know we miss. This is why Neptune is so. If Venus is union, fertility, sensuality, Neptune is the higher octave of Venus. It's a divine union, it's a spiritual union that is incredibly erotic, but it also tends to the missing. And it has an important role in Kundalini rise, because it would tend to manifest miraculous healing. Once we acknowledge, once we become aware, hey, that is missing. With Neptune, it tends to manifest the cure. And this is why Neptune is also involved with wave-based scientific revolutions, which in their lower frequency is radiation damage. Think about the fact that they treat cancer anomalies of cancer cells growth, which is a disease we call cancer, with radiation that is toxic. Recording. Okay, those are really difficult topics, and have a parent here. It's triggered by it, or needs a glass. Maybe I'm misinterpreting because of signals and noises. Anyway, kaya kan kos. So what happened to that child that goes through eroticism of meeting their child needs? That child is susceptible to sexual violence if they are not, and they could be programmed as the recipient and or the offender. Okay. And so this is where children would get to see things or be exposed to things, maybe even on the astral, that are of low frequency, including Peter rings. And what's done? There's a war over the psychic realm. Okay, they want you to think that the astral doesn't exist. Even a quote from Satanic Ritual Abuse Survivor. Basically, they were saying, unconsciousness doesn't exist. Rape only happens in daylight consciousness. No, it doesn't. They need the person dissociated to rape them. A conscious, sovereign person is more difficult to control. And rape is done to try to bring people to mind control positions. Thank you. This is why they need them unconscious. The rape is done to dissociate the fragment the person's consciousness and thereby their identity, and disconnect them from any belief in any loving parent and so on and so forth. How do you explain a loving parent that did everything to bring children, defended their child from violence, didn't ask for help from the welfare or anything like that, that somehow that child's nervous system was still hacked as an infant, and they went through basically ritual abuse? With all the guilt trips that parents have in general about anything. Okay, if my plant is dead, even though, or is not dead, maybe I'm speaking something shouldn't. You saw that parental guilt trip. Okay, brought a sustainable plant to plant inside indoors. I don't know if I watered it too much, wasn't delivering new leaves. Okay, it does. I cannot blame the plant. There's something around the conditions that wasn't suffice. Maybe not enough sun, maybe too much water, maybe the combination of all those. But until there is enough sun, I cannot just blame the plant for not growing, or say that the planet doesn't want to help himself. Okay? And we've all blamed ourselves in that as well. If a person who advocates or helps people doesn't get their safety, their sleep, their energy, their sovereign of energy to themselves, they will eventually be depleted from assisting others, because that's just life. Another social programming is the myth of those that didn't have anything helped others, and sometimes that's a dynamo. But it's not, how should I say that? People do get depleted. And um, one of the most difficult and challenging things, okay, to deal with is the issue of choice. Is what happens after death and the issue of choice. Because and Aquarius is, how should I say, it's a Saturn sign. Okay, it's not Pisces. It's not coming with grace and compassion. It's coming with information and truth. Aquarius exposes the fact that our nervous system has mechanism. Because Saturn is in Pisces now, we can see the structure and see, well, there's something that emerges here, because on a frequency of love that is honoring the sovereign, even though the sovereign is hackable, somehow the sovereign becomes less hackable. So they need to perpetuate trauma to keep people not sovereign. And the next sign is indeed Aries, which is the sign of sovereignty. And this is funny because Aries is an action sign. A lot about the Me Too, I was laughing. I said, what do we want? Sovereignty. What do we do? Surrender into the fight. What do you mean surrender into the fight? It's letting go. It's basically practicing the relaxed arousal state of the nervous system. I need to speak the truth, or the truth is, though I'm in life risk, I need to speak the truth to heal, because it decongests the energy. They try to do all kind of things with the truth that I speak, which exposes more truth and more truth and more truth and more truth, and then I become more embodied and more embodied. Then they try to do more things to disembody, and that exposes more things. And then the more that they try to put force on the sovereign to become unsovereign, the more their helplessness, this dismemberment is exposed, because people no longer want to be a member of society, secret or not, that dismembers its members and only grants belonging on the guise of that. And that needing belonging, which is one of the most gathering forces, people not wanting to be disincluded. Okay, how did they get Hitler to Hitler? He was homeless, didn't receive help, was tortured. Very important component. If he could blame that on something external to the nation that he is in, then he gets to depopulate from these sectors. Now, of course, anybody against the regime would be what? Also Jew. While Jews traded Jews, sex trafficked and tortured in bloodletting rituals to the Nazis. By the way, to create the Holocaust. Why? Money's running. That get to enjoy all the dividends of their other Jewish businesses, all the capital, under the guise of almost Bolshevism. Is it unique to the Jews? No. Every single tribe did that. The Mammoth Taliban's back in Gaza is a testament to something. Sovereignty is, of course, in connection with the land. This is the next sign, Taurus. Why? Nervous system. Why do Pisces and Taurus sextile? When you walk barefoot on soil where something grows in it, basically you balance your nervous system, which is both the previous sign Aquarius, is the global nervous system, and the private nervous system, which is the city. What is the city? A set of plots of land with housing on it. Now, the more that the city grows, people think that they can build another house in their yard. They cannot. They had to come, if they wanted that possibility of another layer, they had to computate for that in the building of the city. Why they cannot? Because nervous system, right to light, right to light, right to light. Why is my amaranth not growing? Because this window, though it has light, is not enough light, not enough good direction for the light. Has other attributes. It's good to have a window. It's good to have a room in the house that is a little bit hidden, because that's where the Pluto is at. And right now Pluto is in the bedroom, and indeed I sleep in a bedroom where there's not too much light. But for the amaranth, it's not good. The amaranth needs sun. Sun is also associated with the father. When children are born to raped mothers, they cannot become fathers that are loving unless they somehow find a way to heal. And if their only sense of belonging is when they rape, not just women, boys. Okay? Look at the Sun and Mercury. They have been dancing in this dance for several degrees now. 0, 1, 2 degree in Aquarius. Both of them applying to conjoin Pluto. Okay, the synodic cycles with the Sun, Venus, Mars, Mercury, and the new moon, of course, they have been beyond lengthy. Okay, it is the sign of Saturn, but they've been beyond lengthy. Saturn is time, delay, and so on, duration. Because we are updating a shit ton of things. And all these things that I just mentioned, they govern choice. Where does a plant choose to grow leaves is according to the exposure to the sun. Does it need more exposure to the sun or less exposure? I brought flowers to my mom. They grew the rest of the flowers because they need more shade, but they grew the rest of the flowers in a direction that is countering the direction of the sun and going up. Because they needed the sun, but they needed it from a more hidden place. And no, I cannot put that amaranth in the kitchen or something like that. It's too big of a plant. That it's another thing that reveals, oh, there's not enough place for the porch. Okay, that this plant. Okay, and that is an architectural constraint, but it's also a relational one. For me, if it was my porch, there would be all these plants in this porch. My parent needs to sit and have space. Two nervous systems that work differently. There are already plants in the porch, okay, for those of them. Yes, the constraint of space. Now, what happens when we have the sun? It's another thing from Bellanova. The moon is very supportive and nourishing. The sun is growth. Okay, but basically, if you think about plants, it's the same. We see the sun, and then the plant grows. And the moon is supportive of the sun's growth. So if a child doesn't see enough sun or sunlight, doesn't not exposed to growth. This is why the right to light in buildings matter. We cannot give up the right to light. We will grow depressed babies. This is also why son, father, having a father that fathers matters. Not a father as a part of a secret society who has to rape children to get the next rank. Okay? Now, of course, it's very difficult to have a father that father without the moon that nourishes. How will the moon nourish with child marriages, where the moon is a child that didn't receive what it even needs, for example, to be a child before it is a mother, to nourish the sun? How do we break through or break from those things? One is awareness is the light of the sun. Compassion and points of interference to each person is going to be different. Whether it's walking outside to see more sunlight, whether it's taking action to raise awareness to the right of light. In architecture, the world is changing. Whether it's raising awareness to all these things that I were talking about. And I gave you a solid argument that is accessible. There's not too much terminology. Okay? There is the beginning, the emerging science. Then there is technology that approves it to higher percentages and higher patterns. And that technology turns the science from being something that we think may be scientific to something that we consider scientific. When that technology is secret under the guise of classified project, national security, or whatnot, what is congested is not scientific development. It's just that the scientific development is done in secret, and we, the people, don't have a say on how the technology is used. Okay? So I hope that this is basically, it's applying my thesis to real life, but more importantly, it's a solid understanding that is important, both to understand and to realize oneself, and when people raise awareness to these topics that are so important. Because when the doctor tells you your child, oh, they're autistic, high functioning autistic, they need this pill and this pill and this pill, then they do a ritual, target hack into the nervous system of the infant and trigger the sexual components by an act of technology and occult interface rape of an infant, and try to have that infant pleasure connected with that, so that from infancy it will be addicted to somebody that no way of even coming to think, where was that child molested, was that, nothing will bring that up. I'm not even talking about kidnapping the children to physical rituals, which, by the way, that enables. Marc Dutroux kidnapped children. To prepare for kidnap, there's a shit ton of occult technologies that are used. And because so much of that is secretive, including the juncture of the technologies that show, for example, the studies that was done in the 70s on egregores. A group of people concentrated on a certain entity. They gave that entity a name, a story, and so on and so forth. And then that entity began to take a life of its own and even demanded sacrifice. Okay, it was an experiment with what is called egregore. There's another type of experiment like that is called a tulpa. Okay, those are spiritual experiments They're declassified several decades later in the best of cases when there is social media. Now, when people are not aware of that, juristically, it's very difficult. So I was one of the researchers that at the juncture of technology and technology being exposed to the people, because I was going to predict what technology, and I was predicting that wave-based technology, that if consciousness exists, it has remnants in matter, and wave-based technology could locate those things. So I predicted what the technology even needs to be. Lo and behold, that technology exists for at least decades. Those technologies. But they're used also against humanity. Why? Because the occult is based on lowering the frequency around sexuality and life. To keep people under control, to diminish them, to prevent them from shining and growing and be sovereign. They want. Now, here is the thing. Pluto is also about being authentic emotionally. If somebody feels jealousy or feels envy, being true to themselves about how they feel can create and manifest the miraculous healing to that. But acting on, trying to diminish, trying to lower the frequency, all these things, they are done to keep people in a collapsed state structure. Some people call it the matrix. I don't know. I'm not. These are people that can't make love. They don't know what is secure attachment. They can't sustain secure attachment because they have things to heal, and that their sense of belonging is based on trauma bonds or cult-like society, which brings cult-like sciences, cult-like politics, cult-like economy.